most of our lives, we think anyway, that we have the illusion of control, even though most of us don't. I mean, unless you wake up in the morning and someone hands you a script and says, here's what you're going to say all day, you're improvising whether you know it or not.
Welcome to Rise and Stride, where we empower you to take your next step in an ever-changing business landscape. Here's your host, Denise LeDuc-Frumming, President and CEO of the California Society of CPAs.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Rise and Stride. With me today is Colleen Murray Payton, founder of Overjoy Creative, a Los Angeles-based agency that produces innovative content and experiences for individuals and organizations. Colleen began her career in sales for a commercial real estate portfolio, while also performing improv and sketch comedy at Second City Theater and IO Chicago. Since then, she has combined her business experience with her performance skills to facilitate workshops with corporations and associations, including Dropbox, the Institute of Real Estate Management, and Vanderbilt University Medical Center, on leadership development, corporate culture, and communication. Thank you so much for joining us today, Colleen.
Oh, thank you, Denise. You know, it is such a pleasure to be with you anytime.
Well, I agree. I'm so looking forward to our conversation. Improv is something that scares a lot of people. And so you will kind of demystify some of that and also give us tips, I'm sure. So I'm so looking forward to talking with you.
Me too.
So maybe we can just kick it off right there about, improv is enough really to start your heart racing, your palms to get sweaty. People are like, when you say we're going to do improv, they look down or sideways, right? They don't look at you. So it's just something that really gives people a lot of angst. So how do you get improv? Like, help us with why it's so important today and how we can really feel more comfortable when we hear we're going to do improv.
Yeah, it's such a great question. And maybe we can start by just defining it for folks who don't know what it is. So improvisation is a fully unscripted art form. So that what that means is the actors on stage get on stage and have no idea what they're going to say in front of a live audience. And they're asking the audience throughout to supply suggestions and ideas, and even sometimes come up on stage and be part of the show. So to your point, it can be a very anxiety-inducing experience because you literally have no idea what's going to happen next. And for people like me, that is a very exciting and delightful place to be. But for a lot of people, it can be, and at the start for me too, it's difficult to understand perhaps, or it's a new set of skills to embrace that moment where you have no idea who you are, why you are, what you are, where you're going. And then on top of that, when you're performing, you want to make it somewhat funny, at least entertaining for the audience. Exactly. So that's what it is. It's the agreement that you'll have no idea what you're going to say, and somehow you'll figure it out together as a group. And in that last sentence is really the power of it, because you're not standing up on stage alone. The key to improv is that you're with others. And so the skills that you acquire to be a great improviser are the ones that help you, not just as an individual be funny or entertaining or successful, but as a group be successful and entertaining and cohesive. Because ultimately what's really interesting for the audience to watch is a group of people who are really intently listening to one another, who are building on each other's ideas, who are picking up on all these clues, so that hopefully the ensemble on stage is one step ahead of the audience, as opposed to the audience being ahead of them. Because if you're ahead of the performance, it's not going to be a great show. But if they're kind of picking up on things and making connections, and you're sort of right there with them on that ride, that's what's really fun to watch. But it can be nerve-wracking, because most of our lives, we think anyway, that we have the illusion of control, even though most of us don't. I mean, unless you wake up in the morning and someone hands you a script and says, here's what you're going to say all day, you're improvising whether you know it or not. You just have more fixed parts of your day. You have more infrastructure that you can count on. You know usually where you're going, or you're around people that you know, or you have context. in this case, you have no context. You're building that all as you go. And so that requires, as I've said, these really kind of deep communication skills and collaboration skills that make you be able to quickly identify markers in your environment and then build on them.
Well, and I would think after the last 3 years, uncertainty, right, is everywhere we're at. And there used to be more of a script or a manual to say, here's where you need to go. Here's what you need to do. And odds are it's going to come out 80% what you think. I would say now there's nothing, right? So you're just every day you're kind of winging it. What's going to happen? And so to me, the improv piece is critical to every piece of your life. And business is one where I don't think historically or traditionally it came into that, right? I mean, humor was thought to be, oh, we can't have humor in the workplace, but it's so important. So how did you, because I think it's really interesting to see the combination of the improv humor and the business element. So tell us how you came to just pulling that all together. And you're really good at pulling things together. So how did you connect all those dots?
Well, I would say that I lived it first because my first career in my 20s in Chicago was working in commercial real estate. So during the day, I was working in major big office buildings, Class A office buildings, and learning that business, which a lot of that business was, working with brokers and their tenants and taking people on tours and, showing people spaces and then negotiating deals. And all of that was based on relationships. And that's really the key to sales, obviously, for any business. But there were so many different interactions, whether it be, our management team or external tenants and clients, et cetera. And so I was doing that during the day, but then at night I was taking improv classes because my roommates, when I moved to Chicago, the first thing they bought me for my birthday was a class at Improv Olympic to take classes to learn how to improvise. And they thought, oh, this is perfect for you. You'd always been a performer. So this is a really fun thing. You should do this. It's like a Chicago, tradition, take improv. Okay. So I did that. So I was doing that at night while I had this day job. And what I found was, that I was comfortable sort of not knowing what I was doing, which I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing during the day. I didn't know what I was doing at night. And to kind of embrace that and start really focusing and listening more on what was happening and then just meeting that moment. So whatever that was, I could learn a script. I could try to figure out exactly what to say and say the right thing. But honestly, what made more sense was just to connect to the person in front of me. Whether that was me saying, I know the answer to the question or I don't, and I'll get back to you, but just building the relationship because the person in front of me is a human. So finding some point of connection. And I think that was a great lesson that I was finding in my improv work was that all I needed to do is just really find a connection with the person. And I could build a relationship, whether I knew everything about the business or not, which I didn't at the time. It was a great starting point that just to follow, listen to what that person was saying, ask questions, and then build from there. And so I think that I lived that first. And so when I work now with organizations and individuals, I really see how these skills are very practical. They're not just theoretical. They're very practical, that when you focus more on the other person, when you lead with curiosity, when you're genuinely interested in knowing someone, I really could talk to a wall. I like getting to know everyone, even if I don't have anything in common with them, or even if I will disagree. I like getting to know people. And I actually like the challenge of finding something I do have in common with them, even if it's just to laugh about something. So I think that's sort of always the guiding principle for me, that I can pull all these things together because creating relationships, being successful in business, no matter what you do, is really just about connecting with others and finding those spaces where you can build. And it doesn't mean you always have to agree. It doesn't mean you have to like each other. It doesn't mean you have to like what you're talking about, but just how do you move things forward in a way that feels authentic and feels light. And that's how I can pull the skills across both worlds, because at night, on stage, you're creating context and ideas as a group. And typically in workplace, you're creating context and ideas as a group.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, no matter what you do in life, you create it's the heart of it is creating relationships, right? So what would you say for those that are uncomfortable talking to others? I mean, CPAs there's firms, there's organizations, and you have to have relationships with those clients you have or those business units you interact with. So what would you say would be a key? Is it curiosity for an introvert, someone who's more introverted, to say, I want to make that connection, I'm just uncomfortable?
Yeah, I would say, it really is about finding a space that's right for you. It doesn't look the same on everybody. I always say this, like in terms of presence, because improvisation can help you with your presence, but how that looks and how that sounds looks very different on everyone. So you can't say, I'm going to make my voice sound this way, or I'm going to move my hands now. What I would say is look for places where you can ask questions, where you can be curious, where you can resonate with someone's experience, even if it's different than your own. How can you resonate? How can you connect? And then kind of organically grow it from there. It doesn't have to be, it's not a one size fits all, but it has to come from a place that's true for you. So leading with curiosity, again, focusing on the other person. If you're nervous, if you find yourself having anxiety around an interaction, focus on the other. See what you can find that you have in common or different, or if you find a starting place before you have to jump into business, I think that always helps.
That is key, because then you have that warm relation kind of start, like you said, starting. And I think it's harder for people to be, I don't know, not come along or disagree if you have that commonality, which is helpful.
I completely agree with that. I think building the relationship makes the good times even better and makes the difficult times manageable, because you've built some kind of fabric where you have respect, you have a foundation in the relationship that really helps you, particularly when things are not so easy, when things have to get disagreeable, or there's been a misunderstanding, or someone's upset about something, if there's a challenge. That foundation that you build between human beings, like, I respect you, I understand you, that really helps you get through those times.
Mm-hmm. And would you say the humor piece helps when you have those really difficult conversations to get through that?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. For me, I think so. And I think the distinction has to be that we're not talking about making fun of someone. Humor isn't like, I'm going to laugh at your funeral. I'm going to laugh because you got fired. Humor has to be this release of tension, right? It's like this common point that we can share when, maybe things really did not go as planned. Okay, how can we bring some lightness, but then still kind of do what we need to do to move forward? Humor can be your point of view, your perspective. I think it's always important that it's not at someone else's expense. You're not making fun of somebody, or it's the joke is on someone else, but you can laugh at the situation. You can whistle while you work. I think bringing more light to a situation helps even the most difficult thing, even if it's going to be super hard. Just relaxing in your body, releasing some of that difficulty. You're going to have to do it one way or another. So you might as well have fun doing it. That's kind of my philosophy. If I can't have fun doing it, or I can't bring some sort of lightness to it and laugh along the way, I'm probably not going to do it.
Now, I like the lightness. I think that probably sets more comfortably with others than the humor piece, right? But to bring that lightness,
because often I think what we add to something that's difficult is sort of our relationship to the difficult situation. Like, now I'm adding extra weight to it because I'm frustrated and it's not how I wanted it to go, and I'm angry, or I'm nervous, and all of that's valid. All of those emotions are valid, but you're going to have to move through this anyway. So if you can process some of those emotions, which you'll have, and that's normal, but once you process them and sort of let them go in a way, release them, not attach to them, then you can bring more lightness to what will be a difficult situation. And that's what I mean when I say heart and humor, is that, it's not that we're laughing constantly at something or like telling jokes the whole time. but we're shifting the way in which we approach something so that it is easier. And usually that's by releasing the tension or the negative emotions that we attach to something, because that weight is extra on top of something that's already challenging. And it's not easy to do. It's a practice, and it starts with self-awareness. But once you can release that extra heaviness, then what you got to do is manageable.
Mm-hmm. Everything starts with self-awareness, doesn't it?
Ooh, yes, it does.
Have to be so aware and thoughtful, I think, and step back and take a breath. And in the world, it's hard to do that, but I would say it's so important. So important. And along with that, you have great thoughts and insights on this. When it comes to responses, there's the yes, but, the no, because, and the yes, and, right? And it's not, we learned talking with you, because we did have a retreat where you helped us. It's not the exact words that you need to use, but it's more from a conceptual basis of how you can have better conversations. So maybe you could explain more, around that.
Yeah, there's certainly probably more than just these three, but these are typical responses in a business setting, especially when it comes to ideas or requests. You can hear no, because, and here's why, or yeah, but, which is the most common. And then some version of yes, and yes, and is a popular term now, but it is the fundamental building block by which improvisers are able to build scenes and ideas on stage. It's how you make something out of nothing. And what I mean by that is to say yes, meaning I see you, I hear you, I get that your point is valid, or your idea is your idea, and here's what I'm going to add. So what is, I think, the most helpful part of that particular tool, the yes and tool, is that it's a two-step process. It's first saying, okay, you're coming to the table with something, whether it's a point of view, an opinion, an idea, and that is valid. I'm not going to take time to argue that you're wrong or it should be different. That's what you've brought. Let me take a look at it first, stay in that curious place. Let me take a look at it, see if I can understand it, and then add something to it. And maybe what I'm adding is a question around it. Or I'm asking for a consideration, especially if something has been brought to me many times and I know it hasn't been successful in the past. How can I ask questions about it? Because maybe this time it will work. So as you say, yes, and doesn't necessarily mean those exact words. It can translate to phrases like, I hear you. Wow, no one's ever asked me that before. That's really interesting. Tell me a little bit more. And here's my question. How are we going to pay for it? And have you considered this? Or what I have to offer right now is X. So it keeps you in a place where you're not shutting things down and you're not looking for what won't work, which is the case with no and with but usually is a contraction that looks at the reasons why we can't do something or the shaping and whittling of. But and is, I can hold these two things at once. I can hold that this is your idea or this is your request, and here's what I think I can do at the moment. Those two things actually may be opposing. You may come to me and say, I want to raise, and I have to say, I hear that you want to raise, and we don't have in our budget this year. But that response lands on someone very differently than, no, we don't have, no, because we don't have money for it. It keeps the conversation open, and ultimately it allows you to say yes to the person, even if you have to say no to the request. And you'll notice when you start to think that way, when you start to bucket your reaction in two different two different categories. First, I'm trying to understand you, and here's what I can add. Everything about your body language is going to change. Your facial expressions will change. The tone of your voice will change. And we know in communication that we're all mirrors of each other. So whatever energy I'm giving out, without awareness, you will unconsciously give me back. And so I can start to change a negative conversation to make it more positive. Conversely, if I'm in a positive conversation and I'm very negative, I can have that influence. So yes, and is a way to keep things moving forward and neutral, even if things are challenging.
I like what you said about, because I think initially when I heard it and others, we have to say, we're saying yes to the request. No, it's yes to the person that's interested and no to the request, maybe, right? So I think that separating and keeping the conversation open is important to remember, because sometimes when you're, think more black and white sometimes. It's hard. It's easy. You think you're saying yes. No, that's not the case. It's being open.
And a way to think about that is a way to frame it is that yes means I'm trying to accept and understand what it is that you're saying. And then the and is what I'm offering or what I'm contributing. So you could take a word, the yes in general, and just say, what I'm doing in the first step is trying to accept, affirm that that's your point of view and understand it. And then I'm going to have some kind of response to it.
Mm-hmm. It's very powerful. It's very powerful, right? And it creates a much better relationship, working relationship for sure. If you can, and even personal, if you enter into it with this mindset for sure.
Yeah. And what's interesting about it too, using it over time off stage in either business or with personal relationships is it's easier on you. It's easier on me, right? When I'm using it, it makes my journey through life easier because I'm not going into that kind of like place where everything is so black and white. Most of life isn't that way. If there are some times when you need to say no, like your kid's running into highway traffic, or should I drink this cup of bleach? No. But for the most part, if you can be if you can believe in multiplicity, you can hold many things at once. It actually is easier for you. You end up everything about your energy will change because you're staying open to the possibilities. And then you are getting surprised along the way. I find that a lot for me. Like I'm surprised actually that by just saying, well, let's see if it could work, or maybe it could, just that on doorway alone ends up surprising me and then gives me better results. I get a better idea. I get a better answer.
Mm-hmm. So to all of you listening, try that. You might be surprised. So you talked about, and I love when you said this, it's communication. You're really, we're mirrors of each other, right? So we know communication, I would say that's probably 90% where things go wrong is always in the communication. So I always say, do we have a communication plan? Where is it? Is it outlined? Because if you don't, you're going to have problems. It's just the way it is. So tell us what you see and some thoughts you have on, communication in business, even personal, where you think there's opportunities there's always opportunity to do better or to improve.
Well, I kind of think about it in two realms. One, there's structural communication that an organization pushes out and is responsible for. And then the other piece is, individual skills around communication, because companies are made of human beings. There will always be potential for communication successes and challenges if the human beings are not able to be good communicators themselves. And so companies can do a lot to offer shared goals, shared language, shared experiences, and give folks tools and techniques to be better at communication. So much of it, though, really does start with self-awareness, like we've been talking about. We come to the table as who we are, and that might mean a lifetime of working on oneself. It may mean very little on oneself. We may not be aware how we show up in a room. And I think that to the extent companies and organizations can help folks with that kind of training, like do you really know how you influence others? You know how you impact others by the way in which you speak, how you treat ideas, how you empower others, or how you yourself speak up. Some of that can be cultural. I think companies are doing a lot better with fortifying their cultures to make sure others' voices are heard and find ways to get people to elevate the folks in the room who don't always get a voice. But it does really come down to what is it that each person is doing, and are they aware of the words that they choose, their body language, how they relate to others. And I always think about it like a domino effect, because once someone does one thing, I react based on that. And then this person reacts based on that. And if we're not clear in communication at the beginning, then we're off to the races and we may not be headed in the right direction, but we're off and running. So I think starting with a place of how do we listen to each other? How do we go deeper? How do we ask more questions? How do we sort of be more tolerant around ambiguity? That I want the answer, I want to know. The answer may not be available. So how do I increase my tolerance to not knowing so that I'm not maladapting and not doing all these things that make it harder to adapt to changes or challenges? That starts on the individual level, though, and it begins with self-awareness. And what improv will teach you is that you can't control anyone else. So the focus is really about, okay, what is it that I can do in this moment, where when everything is swirling around me, change is happening moment to moment. I really don't know where we're going next, but I can't take a magic wand out and try to change anyone else. I just have to keep making choices that would be best for me and for the group to keep things moving.
Mm-hmm. It really resonated with me when you said increased tolerance of not knowing, because ambiguity, like we started out, uncertainty is significant. And how are you okay with that? And just, you can only control what you can control. I read that. I read almost every day. What can I control and what can I not? And to let go. I mean, in my older self, I'm learning to let go more of those I can't. And just be okay in that kind of ambiguous space.
Yeah, I think if you made a list of the things you can control versus can't control, your list of can control is going to be a lot shorter, a lot smaller.
True. It is. Yeah. You had a lot there. I mean, just to unpack, but what would be the one thing you think organizations could do to really help to just increase the self-awareness individuals have and help to hone that skill, I guess? Is there a one? I know it's your training. That would be one thing I would suggest.
Yeah. Getting people aligned around a training that would produce the desired outcomes. But I think companies, to the extent companies can be very clear about what they want the environment to be, defining it as clearly as possible, and wording it with words that are understandable and mean something to people. So clear, simple. This is what we really want. We want an environment where ideas can thrive. We want an environment where people feel valued or feel heard. Being very clear about what the goals are, what the priorities are, not just about the business side, because that can be a whole separate vertical in my mind. But what do you want their experience to be? Define that. How do you want that person to feel? How do you want your employees to feel when they walk to their cars or to the train at the end of the day? Do you want them to feel uplifted and surprised and excited, valued, or not? And really, it's sort of that simple. It's either something fairly positive and aspirational, or average to less average. And that, I'm not saying that every day has to be like, woohoo, we made all these like discoveries and we got donuts and $1 million. But I'm saying, what are the things that you could structurally do to align everyone around the experience in the environment? And of course, there will be slight nuance based on people's personality structures, but what can you do at a very high level, universal sort of best practice to say, this is really what we want you to feel like at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Now that's a really different picture you get than if you say, I want people to have integrity. I mean, those words, right? But the feeling piece is powerful. That truly is. So maybe we can this would be interesting for I think all our listeners. There's probably challenges to doing improv. So maybe you can share with us like a time when, I'm sure there's times jokes don't work, or you get up there and you're like, said the audience is ahead of you and you're not ahead. How do you build that self-confidence to say, okay, I can go on stage again. I'm okay. Same thing with us. How do we talk to someone again or right? How do you build that?
Gosh, this is such a good question. I was thinking about this before the interview, and I mean, in a nutshell, practice. Getting on stage and failing and falling flat on your face, there is nothing like that where, you go out there, you think something's going to work and it just doesn't, or you think you're on the same page with your scene partner and you're not, and you miss something, or, you edit something too fast or too slow or whatever. That feeling of failure, it really does stay with me. I mean, I can remember it's like one of two things when you perform. You either have a great show and I actually don't remember anything. When I have a great show, I don't remember anything. But when I have a really bad show, I remember everything. When it's kind of in the middle, not so much of those two extremes, but failing is important. It's important to fall flat on your face, get back up, and then learn from it and reframe it. And that's what's helpful about really falling flat, is that you get up, you say, okay, it's actually not going to kill me. It felt like it was embarrassing or whatever. It hurt, but I got back up again and I learned, why didn't that work? Maybe I can figure it out. Maybe I can't, but I do know that I will live for another day. And I also know that I will frame things in my head differently than everybody else. I may feel like it was the worst thing in the world. Someone else may just be like, oh, I didn't really notice, or it was okay. Or yeah, you kind of, whatever, it wasn't the greatest. But this is what I mean when I say increased tolerance for, and this is the case with all of life. Like when you have something that you consider failure, the way I will internalize that and experience it is going to be different than the way others experience it. So I first have to know that it may feel sharper to me than it does to others. So to work through that sharpness and to say, all right, I'm going to get back up again. And what am I going to do? What am I going to do next time? And every time I do fall, I know getting back up is the skill. Because I know that I'm going to fall. I know that that's inevitable, but how I get back up and how quick I can get back up, that's the muscle. That's the practice. And then from there, over time, I think if someone's working on presence or getting better at speaking, over time, you're just going to build into your body what will work in those moments. So it does feel, I think, like, oh my gosh, I can't control, I don't know what's happening next. But once you get better at putting yourself out there, speaking or performing, there are some things that you can do every time and build it into your body, whether it's like an opening that works for you, or you can feel confidence because the way in which you learn to hold your body, or you use your voice, or you use your eye contact. So there's things that you'll learn that will bolster you. Even when there's some things you can't control, there will be some things about yourself you can control. And confidence comes from getting out there, having good days and successes too, but knowing that you will get back up when you fall.
Mm-hmm. Now, I love that when you said that. Someone gave me the advice years ago to it's okay to skin your knee, and it'll all heal and it'll be okay. And that was around having diverse, like D&I conversations that are sometimes so difficult, but don't be afraid, just do it, right? And I love what you said about reframing it, because I think sometimes we get so stuck in our own head, self-talk, right? That can be extremely discouraging.
I think it happens as we get older too, much more intensely. I have a 7-year-old, and as I watch my own child acquire skills, whether it's like roller skating or riding a bike or swimming, there's so much messing, there's so much falling and scraping and not getting it right. But because a child is so used to trying new things and so like malleable and tolerant of not being perfect right away, that is what I mean when I refer to how we can as adults make things harder. It is really about that expectation. If I expect myself to be perfect the first time I try something new, well, I'm adding difficulty then to something that's already difficult. I'm adding weight to the challenge, and I'm making it harder for myself. So some of it is kind of unlearning that as adults, we have to know how to do things the right way right away, because that's not really, it's impossible. It's if you're learning a new skill or you've found yourself in a new role with new responsibilities, how are you supposed to be perfect at it right away? That's an unfair ask. And yet that's the expectation we put on ourselves as adults.
Mm-hmm. That's good. The unlearning, that's important too. So how would you, as we get closing here, I have two questions for you. How would you describe a leader or leadership?
Really good question. I think to me, the leaders I've had in my life that are really good are leaders who, again, will clearly define what it is they're asking of their team, or at least be communicative about what they want. They have aspirational goals. They are willing to get to know each person and kind of build an on-ramp for each person to get to those goals. Because maybe the path is a little different based on each person's personality structure or experience. So they're flexible in that sense. They're aspirational. Every good leader I've had has believed in me before I believed in myself. Has said, "Oh no, I know you can do it." And I'd be like, "Really? How do you know that?" And they would just say, I know you can do it. And because of that, I believed in myself at times when I couldn't. So I would say a leader who is courageous, who is kind, flexible, and who is truly aspirational, like hopeful, looking far out in the future, but also willing to, in the moment, adjust or build something for someone. And a good leader is somebody who does all of those things themselves, who can internalize failure, who can accept when things don't go their way with humility, with honesty. They don't have to fake it. Like, they themselves are authentic. I think the thing that always stays in my mind about leadership is like, a great leader is somebody who says, okay, we're all going to get on the sailboat and we're going to go across the ocean, and that's where we're going. We see this destination. That's where we're going to go. And everyone says, okay, well, how are we going to get there? And the leader says, we're all going to get in the boat, and we're going to adjust the sails based on the wind, when the wind blows. Like, I can't tell you exactly how we're going to get there, but I believe that together we will adjust our sails and get to our destination. But it's going to take all of us knowing each other and trusting each other to get there.
That's a great analogy, because so many times I feel like someone will say to a leader, how are we going to get there? Oh, we're going to do A. And they want to hear we're going to do A, B, C, D, E. And the truth of the matter is the best leader says exactly what you said. We're going to get on, and we're going to want to hear all voices and incorporate all thoughts so that we can keep, I always say zigzagging, but adjusting to get there, right? Because otherwise, if I know, what do I need everybody else for? But everybody's experts and know more than me, right? That's why you have people with you. So that's a great analogy, and the adjusting the sails. I'm going to remember that. There's so many things I'm going to remember. And I like the on-ramp when you said that, and believing in people before they believe in themselves.
Yeah, and creating psychological safety. I mean, it is the job of a leader to create that. When I was talking a little bit earlier about what companies can do to create environments where people feel like their experience is empowering, creating psychological safety so that when you're in the boat together, we trust each other enough to say, hey, what's your great idea? Let's go for it. We gotta change direction here. Let's go for it. And if it doesn't work, you're not punished forever. You're not shamed. It's just part of the process. We don't know how we're going to get there. We know we have a destination, but it's every step that we take that we'll do together that really matters.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So much good advice. The one last question I have is for our listeners. Okay, improv, their hearts aren't racing when they hear it anymore. Their palms aren't sweaty, but what's the one thing they could take away and say, I'm going to do this tomorrow, right? And then I'm going to build on that. What would you say is the one thing?
Something that's really, if you watch a show, short form show like Who's On Is It Anyway, or a long form show, if you're in Chicago, go see Second City or any of the theaters there. One thing that's really interesting about improvisers, the best improvisers are the ones that really listen, that are listening to everybody else's idea and then take that idea and build on it. And I think if there's one thing you want to try in your day, is to change the way you listen. Really listen in a way that you are looking for answers that you don't know. You're not looking for the answer you want to hear or that confirms your point of view. You are looking for the answers. You're asking questions and looking for answers that you don't know. And you're focused on the why. Like, what is the why underneath someone's idea or perspective? I think listening is such an underrated art form. And it's a great skill to have in any role, to just truly sit back, listen intently, more than you talk. Sometimes for people like me who are extroverted, listen more than you talk, and listen for the why. So whatever you discover is more connected in your response.
That's great advice. I always think, I try to remember. Yes, try to remember. I have two ears and one mouth, like double, right? Double. But it is hard. It's hard. Yeah. Great advice. So much good advice. I could talk to you for hours, but we only have the time, 30, 40 minutes. So I should probably wrap up, but I just want to thank you for, just helping us with our whole connection with improv and the importance of listening and being there and being your authentic self and getting back up. So thank you, Colleen, as always. You're just delightful to talk to.
Thank you, Denise. I feel the same way about you. It was such a pleasure to be your guest today.
Thank you. And we will have you back again.
Okay, I'll come back.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise.
Rise and Stride is produced by the California Society of Certified Public Accountants. To learn more, visit calcpa.org.